The sun was scorching and the dust rose from the dirt road like a red veil. Maria, with her 7-month belly weighing down her torn blouse, held her husband João's arm, trying to understand what was happening. He pulled his arm away angrily, his eyes flashing. "You're only good for food. I'm sick of you and your belly that only gives me trouble," he shouted. Before she could react, he pointed to a small, crumbling mud house on an empty lot next to what had been their farm. "This is yours now. Deal with this broken wood stove because I can't stand you anymore," he said, throwing a bag of old clothes on the ground. He climbed into his minivan and drove away, leaving behind the noise of the engine and the emptiness in Maria's chest. She fell to her knees on the dry earth, feeling her hands tremble as the baby kicked her belly, as if she knew her mother's pain. The wood-burning stove, crooked and with a cracked chimney, seemed to mock her. A few meters away, the outline of the old farm appeared, a place that had been a symbol of dreams and joint effort. But now there was nothing left. João had sold everything. The farm they had built with so much work was no longer theirs. He had lied to her, saying that they would sell everything to buy an apartment in the city and give a better life to their unborn child. But it was all a lie. He had run away with the money and with Lucia, her 20-year-old friend with dyed hair and an easy smile, whom Maria had welcomed so many times into her home. Maria, with a heavy heart, didn't know how he could do this to her. She remembered the conversations of the last few months when he talked about the city, the apartment, his plans for the future. "We're going to get out of this farm, Maria. Trust me," he said, and she trusted him. In the meantime, he sold the farm behind her back and laughed with Lucia at the village bar. She, pregnant, stayed home, taking care of everything and believing in him. Now, all that was left was that empty plot of land, the little house with a leaky roof and a broken stove. Alone, pregnant, with no one. The ground seemed to disappear beneath her feet. But Maria wasn't one to give up easily. She got up slowly, wiping her face, dirty with dirt and tears. The smell of mold and the dirt of the place suffocated her. The stove was there in the corner like a mocking trophy. He had said, "You're only good for eating." Now she thought, "Then I'll show you, João, that I can do more than that." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor with a candle she found in a drawer, the flame flickering along with her thoughts. Before marrying João, she made sweets to sell at the village fair: brigadeiro, corn cake, coconut candy. The people loved them. They asked for more. But now she had no oven, no good firewood, only that broken stove. "I'll make something, even if it's just a sweet to sell to someone," she thought. She looked through the broken window, seeing the old farm now owned by a stranger. He was there, mocking her, but Maria wouldn't cry over the past. Her son needed her alive. The next day, the sun had barely risen and Maria was already up. Her belly felt heavy, her back ached, but she grabbed a rusty log she found in the backyard and began digging a hole to make a makeshift fire. "If the stove is no good, I'll find a way," he thought. He gathered some dry twigs, sweating heavily as the hot wind blew into his face. In the late afternoon, the smell of roasting corn rose from the fire. It was just a wilted ear of corn that she had in her bag. But for her, that was a victory. She sat on the ground and ate slowly, feeling the simple taste of corn which helped to satisfy her hunger. It was then that he heard footsteps. A figure appeared on the road, a thin woman with a straw hat and basket. "Hi, miss, I'm Dona Zefa. I live around the bend. I saw the smoke and came to take a look," said the woman. Maria was embarrassed, but offered the corn. Dona Zefa sat on a stump, picked up the corn cob and asked, "Where is your husband? Are you alone here, pregnant like this?" Maria swallowed hard, and not knowing what to say, spilled everything. João, the sale of the farm, the lie about the apartment, the leak with Lucia, the land with the broken stove. Dona Zefa listened in silence, chewing her corn, until she spoke. "I work in Mr. Ramiro's kitchen, at Fazenda Nova, right next door. If you want, I can get you a job, but you'll have to put up with it, okay?" Maria felt a light at the end of the tunnel. "I can handle it, Dona Zefa. Just give me a chance." The woman smiled, handed her the basket with tomatoes and cassava and said, "Then come early tomorrow and bring a sweet treat if you know how to make it. The people there love it." When Dona Zefa left, Maria looked at the sky, which was already starting to get dark, and at the broken stove. "You threw me out, João, but I'm going upstairs and my son is going with me." Night fell, and Maria fell asleep on the floor of the little house, dreaming of the smell of brigadeiro in the air. The next morning, the rooster hadn't even crowed when Maria woke up. Her body was sore from sleeping on the hard floor and her belly felt heavier than ever. The baby kicked, as if to say, "Get up, Mom, we have to fight." She rubbed her eyes, feeling the morning chill seep through the cracks in the little house. The broken stove was there, quiet in the corner. But today she wasn't going to fight with it. Dona Zefa had opened a door, and Maria was going to go through it. She picked up the basket that the neighbor had left with tomatoes and wilted cassava, and rummaged through the bag that João had thrown on the floor. She found a small packet of crushed brown sugar and half a bag of cornmeal. We could make a cake, yes, she thought. She didn't have any eggs or butter, but she was going to improvise. He lit a fire in the hole he had dug yesterday, using the remaining twigs. He grated the cassava with a blunt knife he found in the drawer, mixed everything with water and sugar, stirring with his hands until it turned into a thick dough. The smell rose, faint, but it was something. He wrapped the cake in an old cloth and set off, his belly bouncing with every step on the dirt road. Mr. Ramiro's farm was about 3 kilometers away, and the sun was already warming up when Maria arrived. The place was large, with a corral full of cows, wooden sheds, and the strong smell of manure in the air. Maria stopped at the gate, unsure, until Dona Zefa appeared, drying her hands with a dirty apron. "Come on, girl, but don't stand still. The work is tough." Maria followed Dona Zefa to a kitchen with a clay floor, a real wood stove, pots black with soot, and a bunch of people shouting orders. Dona Zefa asked, "Did you bring the sweets?" Maria, a little embarrassed, took the cake out of the cloth and replied, "This is all I could make with what I had." The woman took the cake, smelled it, and cut a piece. She chewed slowly, frowning, until a crooked smile appeared. "It's a little dry, but it tastes good. The people will eat it. Stay with me today and help with the food for the farmhands. If you can manage, I'll talk to Mr. Ramiro so he can find you a place here." Maria nodded, her heart racing. This was her chance. The day was hard. She peeled potatoes, washed pots, and carried firewood, all with her belly getting in the way and sweat running down her face. The workers, big, noisy men, came in and out of the kitchen asking for coffee, rice, and beans. Dona Zefa was in charge of everything, but Maria could barely keep up. By the end of the afternoon, her back was hurting so much that she had to sit on a stool to keep from falling. That was when Mr. Ramiro appeared, a short man with a crumpled hat and a hoarse voice. "Who's that pregnant woman over there, Zefa?" he asked. "It's Maria, boss. She's all alone. Her husband left her on a piece of land nearby. She worked hard today and even brought a cake." Mr. Ramiro looked at Maria, then at the cake, and took a piece. He chewed it with an unimpressed expression. "It's bad, but it's manageable. If you want to stay, you have to fix it. You can help, but it's on your own. If there's any trouble, I'll kick you out." Maria swallowed her pride and thanked him quietly. It wasn't much, but it was a start. On the way home, the sky was already dark, and she was carrying a bag of beans and a piece of bacon that Dona Zefa had given her as alms. Fatigue weighed heavily, but his head was full of ideas. If I make a decent dessert, they'll want more. But what about that broken stove? That's when he heard a noise on the road. A cart stopped beside her, pulled by a thin horse. The man on the bench was Zé, a neighbor from the old farm with a thin beard and tired eyes. "What are you doing here alone, Maria? Where's João?" He hesitated, but Maria, no longer ashamed, told him everything. The sale of the farm, the lie about the apartment, the escape with Lucia. Zé shook his head, scratching his chin. "That dog. I saw him with Lucia in the village last week, spending money like he was a king. The farm now belongs to Mr. Otávio, a rich guy from the city." Maria felt her blood boil. João was living her life while she was there, struggling to survive. Zé offered her a ride to the land and, on the way, said, "If you need firewood or tools, let me know. Mr. João owed me a favor. Now I'll charge you." When they arrived, Maria threw the beans and bacon in a corner and fell to the ground exhausted, but the fire in her chest was lit. The next day she went back to work on the farm, taking another cake. This time she added a piece of melted bacon to add flavor. The workers ate it all, and one even asked for more. Dona Zefa laughed. "See, girl, you have a knack for it." Maria smiled for the first time in days. The baby moved, as if he approved, but the peace was short-lived. At the end of the day, while she was cleaning the pots and pans, she heard the sound of an engine. A pickup truck stopped at the entrance to the farm and she froze. It was him, João got out, laughing loudly with Lucia hanging on his arm. "I came to get some things I forgot with Mr. Ramiro," he shouted, without even noticing Maria there. She hid behind the door, her heart racing, watching him pass by as if she had never existed. Lucia laughed in a new dress while Maria held her belly and a dirty spoon. That night, lying on the floor, she promised, "You will see me standing, John. My son and I will go up, and you will swallow that laughter." The next morning, the sky was cold, with a thin mist covering the fields. Maria woke up with a warm chest. The image of João laughing with Lucia in the truck wouldn't leave her mind. Each step on the dirt road to Mr. Ramiro's farm was like a punch to the ground, as if she could crush the betrayal with her feet. The baby moved restlessly in her belly, and Maria whispered, "Calm down, my son. We'll get over it." The bag of beans and the piece of bacon that Dona Zefa had given her were stored away. But today she wanted more. She wanted to show that that broken stove would not define her life. She arrived at the farm's kitchen with a sweaty face and steady hands. Dona Zefa was already at the stove, stirring a pot of coffee that gave off a strong, familiar smell. "You look like you haven't slept, girl," the woman said, without taking her eyes off the fire. Maria took a deep breath and replied, "I didn't get much sleep, but I came here to work hard." She picked up a machete and began to chop onions for the workers. Her eyes burned as much as her heart, and as the tears flowed, she thought about João spending the money from their farm, laughing with Lucia, while she struggled to survive. In the middle of the morning, Maria decided to take a risk. She grabbed a handful of sugar left over from coffee, a piece of cassava from the basket, and the rest of the bacon. "I'm going to make some coconut candy," she decided. She melted the bacon in a frying pan, mixed it with the sugar until it became a thick sauce, and threw in the grated cassava. The sweet smell rose up, mixed with the salty fat, and the workers began to approach. "What's that, Maria?" asked Chico, a thin man with a thin mustache. She cut off a piece and gave it to him. "Try it." He chewed it and opened his eyes wide. "Take a piece, this is really good." Dona Zefa looked askance, suspicious, but took a piece too. "You're learning, huh? If you improve the quality, men will buy it." Maria felt a warmth in her chest. It was a small sign that I was on the right path. At the end of the day, the workers were asking for more coconut candy, and she promised, "I'll bring it again tomorrow." Mr. Ramiro walked past the kitchen, saw the movement, and grumbled, "If you want to sell this here, it's up to you, but don't get in the way of the service." Maria nodded, biting back a smile. It was the first victory. On the way home, she stopped at Zay's house to ask for some kindling. He was fixing a fence, and his skinny horse was grazing nearby. "I brought you a piece of my candy," said Maria, taking out a coconut candy wrapped in a cloth. Zay tasted it, scratched his beard, and said, "Okay, Maria, if you need firewood or a way to fix that stove, I'll help you. Your João owed me a cartload of corn that he never paid back." She thanked him, feeling that she wasn't as alone as she thought. Arriving at the little house, Maria lit an improvised fire in the backyard and spent the night stirring another batch of coconut candy. She used what was left over from the farm kitchen. Her stomach hurt. She was tired, but she didn't stop. "This is for you, my son," she whispered as the sweet thickened. She slept with her hands smelling of sugar, dreaming of a day when João would choke on his own laughter. The next day, she took the coconut sweets to the farm. The workers bought everything in half an hour, paying with dirty coins which she kept in a torn pocket. Dona Zefa laughed, "You're becoming the queen of sweets, girl." But not everything was easy. While she was cleaning the kitchen stove, she heard a familiar noise. João's truck was back, parked near the shed. He got out with Lucia, laughing loudly as if the world belonged to him. Maria stood still, her heart pounding. They didn't see her, but she saw them. He was spending the farm's money, their lives, on her. Lucia pointed at things bossy, and João obeyed like a dog. Maria held back her tears. "He's wasting my sweat," she thought, clutching the basket so tightly that her nails dug into the wood. She wanted to run over there, scream, and make them laugh, but the baby kicked hard, and she took a deep breath. "No, my son, we won't lower ourselves. They'll see me standing, not on my knees." She put away the coins, picked up the empty basket, and turned her back. The way back was easier, even with the pain in her legs. Each step was a promise. She would grow up. She would show João that he had thrown away a treasure. The next night, lying on the floor of the little house, Maria did the math. She had saved almost $30 at the market, plus the coins from the farmhands. That's enough to buy a bag of sugar and fix the stove once and for all, she muttered, looking at the leaky roof. The broken stove was there in the corner like an old enemy, but now she had a plan. The next day, she asked Zay for a ride to the village. This time, she wanted to buy materials for the stove. Zay showed up with the cart, the skinny horse humming as always, and took her to a small hardware store. Maria bought a bag of sugar, a piece of sheet metal to cover the stove chimney, and some nails. Zay helped carry the groceries, grumbling, "You're crazy to mess with that, pregnant." Maria laughed for the first time in weeks. "I'll accept your help, Zay, but I'm going to get my hands dirty." Arriving at the land, the two spent the afternoon hammering nails, adjusting the sheet metal, and cleaning the stove. The sun was already setting when they lit the first log. The fire caught weakly but steadily, and the smell of burning wood filled the little house. "It's alive!" Maria shouted, her eyes shining. Zay scratched his beard and said, "Now you have your own oven, woman. Make your own sweets and shut up those who humiliated you." She nodded, feeling the weight of her belly, but also the lightness of her soul. That night she tested the stove with a batch of brigadeiros. The sugar melted perfectly, the bacon gave it a special touch, and the smell filled the yard. Maria sat at the door eating a warm piece, looking at the stars. "We're starting, my son," she said to Lucas, who was in her lap. She felt that something was changing, even if slowly. The next day, she took the brigadeiros to the farm and gave them to the farmhands. They bought everything. Dona Zefa, upon seeing the movement, said, "You're becoming a real confectioner, girl." Maria smiled for the first time in days, the baby moving as if he approved. Late in the afternoon, while cleaning the kitchen, she heard the sound of an engine. When she looked at the entrance to the farm, she saw a truck parked. Her heart raced. It was him. João got out, laughing loudly, with Lucia hanging on his arm. "I came to get some things I forgot with Mr. Ramiro," he shouted, without even noticing Maria there. She hid behind the door, her heart racing, watching him pass by as if she had never existed. Lucia was wearing a new dress, and João looked like he was on top of the world. Maria, with her stomach and heart tight, held the dirty spoon in her hands. She knew that this moment would mark her life. When João and Lucia entered the shed, Maria, lying on the floor of the little house, made a promise to herself. "You will see me standing up, João. My son and I will go up, and you will swallow this laughter." The next day dawned colder, with a thin mist covering the fields. Maria woke up with a heavy heart. The image of João, laughing with Lucia, wouldn't leave his head. Every step on the dirt road to Mr. Ramiro's farm was as if she were crushing João's betrayal underfoot. The baby, restless, moved in the belly, as if he understood his mother's pain. Maria whispered, "Calm down, my son. We will get through this." The bag of beans and the piece of bacon that Dona Zifa had given her were kept with her, but today she wanted more. "I wanted to show João that that broken stove would not define his life." She arrived at the farm's kitchen with a sweaty face and steady hands. Dona Zefa was at the stove, stirring a pot of coffee that filled the air with a strong, familiar smell. "You look like you haven't slept, girl," the woman said, without taking her eyes off the fire. Maria took a deep breath and replied, "I didn't get much sleep, but I came here to work hard." She picked up a machete and began to chop onions for the workers. Her eyes burned, both from the smoke from the fire and from the anger she felt toward João. As tears ran down her face, she thought about him, spending the farm's money on Lucia while she struggled to survive. The next morning, Maria decided to take a chance. She took a handful of sugar left over from her coffee, a piece of cassava from the basket, and the little bit of bacon that was left over. "I'm going to make a coconut candy," she thought. She melted the bacon in a frying pan, mixed it with the sugar until it formed a thick sauce, and threw in the grated cassava. The sweet smell rose up, mixed with the salty fat, and the workers began to approach. "What's that, Maria?" asked Chico, a thin man with a thin mustache. She cut off a piece and gave it to him. "Try it." He chewed it and opened his eyes wide. "Take a piece. This is really good." Dona Zefa looked suspiciously, but also took a piece and tried it. "You're learning, huh? If you improve the quality, men will buy it." Maria felt a warmth in her chest. She felt that she was on the right path. At the end of the afternoon, the workers were asking for more coconut candy, and she promised, "I'll bring it again tomorrow." Mr. Ramiro walked past the kitchen, saw the movement, and grumbled, "If you want to sell this here, it's up to you, but don't get in the way of the service." Maria nodded, biting back a smile. It was the first small victory. On the way home, he stopped at Zay's house to ask for some twigs. He was mending a fence, and the skinny horse was grazing nearby. "I brought you a piece of my candy," said Maria, taking out a coconut candy wrapped in a cloth. Zay tasted it, scratched his beard, and said, "Okay, Maria. If you need firewood or a way to fix that stove, I'll help you. Mr. João owed me a cartload of corn that he never paid back." Maria thanked him, feeling that she was not as alone as she thought. Arriving at the little house, Maria lit an improvised fire in the backyard and spent the night stirring another batch of coconut candy. She used what was left over from the farm kitchen. Her stomach hurt. She was tired, but she didn't stop. "This is for you, my son," she whispered as the sweet thickened. She slept with her hands smelling of sugar, dreaming of a day when João would choke on his own laughter. The next day, Maria took the coconut sweets to the farm. The workers bought everything in half an hour, paying with dirty coins, which she kept in a torn pocket. Dona Zefa laughed. "You're becoming the queen of sweets, girl." Maria smiled for the first time in days, the baby moving as if he approved. But not everything was easy. While she was cleaning the kitchen stove, she heard the sound of an engine. A pickup truck stopped at the entrance to the farm and she froze. It was him. João got out, laughing loudly, with Lucia hanging on his arm. "I came to get some things I forgot with Mr. Ramiro," he shouted, without even noticing Maria there. She hid behind the door, her heart racing, watching him pass by as if she had never existed. Lucia was wearing a new dress, and João looked like he was on top of the world. Maria, with her stomach and heart tight, held the dirty spoon that was in her hands. She knew that this moment would mark her life. When Hansel and Gretel entered the shed, Mary, lying on the floor of the little house, made a promise to herself. "You will see me standing up, Hansel. My son and I will go up, and you will swallow that laughter." The rooster had barely crowed when Mary woke up the next day. She was exhausted from working on the farm, but she knew she couldn't give up. The land was still hers, and she had to fight for it. He got up with difficulty, feeling his belly heavy, and went to the improvised stove to make more sweets. The smell of brigadeiro filled the house as she stirred the pan. When he was done, he made the basket of sweets and took the rest of the food he still had to take to the village. Today would be another market day, and she couldn't miss the chance to save more money for the rent. Even though she was tired, Maria knew she had to continue. The trip to the village was tiring, but she didn't complain. Each step was a promise that one day she would be in a better place. When she arrived, she put the cloth on the ground, arranged the sweets, and shouted, "Fresh coconut candy, brigadeiro with bacon." Some people passed by and looked, but none of them seemed interested. Maria felt a tightness in her chest, but she didn't lower her head. She had learned not to give up. That's when a woman in a kitchen apron stopped. "How much is this coconut candy?" she asked. Maria answered, her voice hoarse with nervousness. $2, but it's good, you can try it." The woman tasted it and smiled. "It's delicious, you know. I'll take 2. That was the moment when more people started to show up. A boy on a bike bought a brigadeiro. A woman with a headscarf took the whole cake. In 2 hours, the basket was almost empty and Maria's pocket was jingling with more coins. She counted the money with a smile on her face. "It worked, my son. We're staying." But as always, the peace didn't last long. As she put the cloth away, she heard a laugh that chilled her spine. Lucia was there on the other side of the market, laughing loudly and pushing a thin, sullen-looking João behind her. Lucia was wearing a tight dress, and João, wearing a new shirt, was smelling all over. Maria stood still, her heart pounding. They didn't see her, but she saw everything. João was spending the money from the farm and from their life on Lucia, while she, with the baby in her arms, sold sweets to survive. "The money is running out for them, but not for me," thought Maria, feeling a bitter taste in her mouth. João looked in her direction for a moment, and when their eyes met, he hesitated. But Lucia screamed again, and he turned away. Maria, with a heavy heart, turned away too and left. The way back was easier, even with the pain in her legs. Each step was a promise for the future. That night, Maria lay down on the floor with Lucas on her lap. She looked at the leaky ceiling and did the math. She had saved almost $30 at the market, plus the pennies from the workers. "With that, I can buy a bag of sugar and fix the stove once and for all," she thought. But she was getting tired. She knew she couldn't stop. The next day, she went to the village with Zay to buy materials for the stove. Zay brought the cart and she bought a bag of sugar, a piece of sheet metal to cover the stove's chimney, and nails. Zay grumbled, "You're crazy to be messing with that pregnant." Maria smiled, thanked him, and said, "I'll accept your help, Zay, but I'm going to get my hands dirty." Arriving home, Maria and Zay spent the whole day adjusting the stove. The sun was already setting when they finally lit the first log. The fire caught on weakly but with enough strength. The smell of burning wood filled the little house, and Maria shouted, "It's alive!" Zay, scratching his beard, said, "Now you have your own oven, woman. Make your sweets and shut up those who humiliated you." She smiled, feeling the weight of her belly and the lightness of her soul. At the end of the night, Maria tested the stove with brigadeiros. The sugar melted perfectly. The bacon gave it a special touch, and the smell filled the yard. Maria, sitting at the door of the little house eating a hot piece, looked up at the sky. "We're starting, my son," she thought, while the baby kicked as if she already knew what was coming. The next day, Maria took the brigadeiros to the farm and gave them to the workers. They bought everything. Dona Zefa, upon seeing the commotion, smiled. "You're becoming a real confectioner, girl." Maria smiled, but the peace didn't last long. At the end of the day, while she was cleaning the pans, she heard the familiar sound of an engine. João's truck was parked near the shed. Her heart raced. He got out, laughing loudly, with Lucia hanging on his arm. "I came to get some things I forgot with Mr. Ramiro," he shouted. Maria hid behind the door, her heart beating fast. She saw João pass by without even looking at her. Lucia was wearing a new dress, and João looked like he was living life to the fullest, while Maria was struggling to survive. When Hansel and Gretel entered the shed, Maria, sitting on the floor of the little house, made a promise. "You'll see me standing up, Hansel. My son and I will go up, and you will swallow your laughter." The next morning, Maria woke up with the feeling that she was getting closer and closer to making it. The road was difficult, but she would not give up. Meanwhile, the new stove was already working. With the help of Zay and Dona Zefa, she began to make sweets every day and sell them at the village fair. Her business was booming, and she was determined to show Hansel that he had thrown her away, but that she would be successful on her own. Maria's life began to change little by little. The smell of the sweets she prepared invaded the little house in the village, and the coins she earned began to accumulate. It wasn't much, but it was enough to pay the rent for the land and still save a little for the future. At the end of the week, she sold everything she made, be it brigadeiro, coconut candy, or corn cake, and the money slowly went into her pocket. Dona Zefa and Zay helped her, each in their own way, and Maria felt that she was getting back on her feet. The floor was still dirty, the ceiling still had holes, but the fire in the stove never went out. Maria also felt the need to protect Lucas. Her belly grew smaller and smaller every day, but the fear of not being able to take care of him never left her mind. Not knowing what the future would bring made her fear for her son's safety. She wondered what his life would be like without João, but then she remembered all the things she had done alone without his help. When the baby cried, she would pick him up, rock him in her arms, and whisper, "We can do this, my son, no matter what happens." At the fair, sales continued to grow. The village was beginning to notice that Maria was no longer the abandoned woman with a broken stove. She was becoming a household name, and her sweetness was spreading like a well-kept secret. The village fair began to fill up with people who knew that it had the best sweets in the region, and people wanted to try them. When she sold the brigadeiros and coconut sweets, Maria smiled, but deep down she still wondered what would become of her life if the rent went up, or if João came back with more lies and promises. But what scared her most was the possibility of losing the land and seeing her son homeless. And what seemed impossible began to happen. One day, while she was at the market buying more ingredients, Maria heard a comment about her. "Do you know who Maria from the countryside is? The one who made sweets in the village?" a woman said. Another person, older, confirmed, "Yes, I heard she's good. There are people buying her sweets to sell elsewhere." Maria felt her heart race. She never imagined that her sweets could go so far. For her, it was just a way to survive, but for others, she was starting to become a brand. However, Maria's life would not be easy. One day, while she was selling at the market, she heard someone calling her name. When she looked, she saw João standing on the other side of the street. He was thin, unshaven, and in dirty clothes. Maria felt a shiver run down her spine. João approached, his eyes downcast, almost not daring to look at her. "Maria," he said, his voice hoarse, "I know I was wrong, and everything that happened was my fault. Please help me." Maria looked at him for a moment, not knowing what to think. His words no longer touched her. The anger she felt for him was still alive, but there was something stronger inside her, something she knew she could not ignore. She was no longer the woman João had abandoned. She had already risen again. With a deep sigh, she looked at him and said, "You threw me into the mud, João. Now it's too late. I have already found my way. You may regret it, but my son and I have already moved on." João lowered his head but didn't say anything else. He stood there, not knowing what to do, watching Maria move on with her life while he stayed behind. Maria didn't look at him again. She turned her back and walked away, with Lucas in her arms, towards her stall, where the sweet smell of brigadeiro and coconut candy filled the air. She knew she was on the right path, and at that moment, she realized that nothing and no one could stop her ascension anymore. Time passed, and Maria saw her life change completely. The village fair was already full of customers who came looking for her sweets. The brigadeiros, the coconut sweets, the corn cake, everything was a hit. She was starting to become well known, and people talked about her sweets all over the region. Maria felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had never experienced before, the feeling that her struggle was worth it. With each sweet sold, she felt that she was closer to building something lasting, something that no longer depended on João or anyone else. She woke up early every day, her body tired but her soul full of hope. Working in Dona Zefa's kitchen and selling sweets at the fair became her routine. While taking care of Lucas, she prepared the dough, melted the sugar, and, with steady hands, transformed what had previously been just a way of surviving into a real business. Maria knew there was still a lot to be done, but for the first time in a long time she felt that she was in control of her life. One day, while she was stirring the brigadeiro pan, someone appeared at the fair. A man in a suit, with a serious look, stopped in front of Maria's stand. He looked at the sweets with a careful look, as if he were analyzing their quality. Maria, who was already used to suspicious looks, did not get nervous. The man finally spoke. "I've heard about you, Maria. Your sweets are good. I own a grocery store in the city and would like to buy your sweets to resell in my stores." Maria couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man continued, "I want 50 coconut sweets and 50 brigadeiros every week, and I'll pay $40 for each batch. What do you think?" Maria, with her heart racing, quickly did the math. This was a huge opportunity to expand her business. She was beginning to see the future in a different way. The life that had seemed so difficult now seemed full of possibilities. "It's a deal," Maria replied, her voice trembling with emotion. The man smiled and took a piece of coconut sweet. "Perfect then. See you next week." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She thought about what had just happened. Her life was changing. Now she had a real chance to expand, to make her sweets reach more people. The future looked bright, but she knew she still had a long way to go. What motivated her the most, however, were not the contracts, the money, or the orders. It was the fact that she had found something that made her feel that her efforts had not been in vain. She was creating a better future for Lucas. The next day, Maria woke up with the weight of what she had just accomplished. She felt for the first time that she was truly in control of her life. She was no longer the woman who had been abandoned by João with a broken stove. She was the woman who was making her own way, and no one could take that away from her. Her journey was still just beginning, but Maria knew that in the end, she would get exactly where she wanted to be. Maria couldn't believe what was happening. Orders began to increase, and the village fair was no longer enough for her. She had to start organizing herself better, making the sweets in the morning and then delivering them to the city. But what she didn't expect was that while her life was taking shape, the past would still haunt her. One day, when I was in the kitchen preparing a large batch of brigadeiros, the door opened with a snap. Maria turned around and saw João, with his eyes downcast, entering through the kitchen door. He was dirty, with messy hair and an unshaven beard. His face was tired, and he looked older. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. "Maria, I know I was wrong. I lost everything. Lucia left, took what was left of the money, and now I'm here not knowing what to do. Forgive me." Maria remained silent, looking at João. The man who had abandoned her, who had made a joke of her, was now there, begging for forgiveness. He approached, and Maria felt a knot in her stomach. The anger, the pain, everything seemed to come back, but she knew that this was not the moment for her to remember everything he had done. She had already gotten over it. "João, you have no idea how much I suffered, but do you know what's worse? I got over it. My son and I got over it. And now you come here asking for forgiveness? That's not how it works anymore. You lost me, and you lost the chance to be a part of my life. João, his face marked by pain, lowered his head. I lost everything, Maria. I saw you fighting and I realized what I lost. You got back up on your own. I am nothing without you. Maria looked at him firmly. You are nothing in my life anymore, João. What you did to me is unforgivable, but you will have to deal with it alone. My son and I will move on, and you, with your shame, will be left behind. João walked away slowly, without saying anything else. He left the house and for the last time looked back, seeing Maria standing with Lucas in her arms and a slight smile on her face. Maria looked at him, without anger, but with a certainty that he would never have. Now you will live with what you did, and I will live with what I achieved. The next morning was clear and warm. Maria got up early, feeling the weight of responsibilities, but also the relief of being alone, of being independent. She looked at the repaired stove, the organized kitchen, and Lucas, who was already starting to crawl around the house. We will make it, my son. No matter what happens, our life will always be ours. The sweets, the orders, the new contracts, everything was changing. Maria was growing up, and her name was now known. People referred to her as the sweets lady, and her stall at the fair was now a fixture. Her work was being recognized, and the future was opening up before her in ways she had never imagined. Maria knew she was creating something great, but the most important thing was that she was creating it for her son. His life would have what she never had, and she would do everything she could to make sure he grew up with dignity. João had lost his chance to be a part of that, but Maria didn't need him anymore. She was already on another path, stronger and more determined than ever. Maria's success grew more and more. She couldn't believe that in such a short time her life had changed so much. What had once seemed like a nightmare had now become a dream come true. She worked tirelessly, making sweets, delivering orders throughout the city, and even starting to think about expanding even further. Maria's name began to be associated with flavor, quality, and perseverance. She knew that the road ahead would still be difficult, but she was willing to fight for what she was building for herself and Lucas. However, the pressure of keeping everything running was starting to take its toll. Maria no longer had time to rest like before. Working in the kitchen with Dona Zefa, selling sweets at the fair, and new contracts with stores in the city required absolute dedication from her. But at the same time, she felt like she couldn't stop. She had to make it work for Lucas, for herself. As the sun began to set, she was still in the kitchen, mixing ingredients, the dim candlelight illuminating her tired face. That night, while she was stirring the coconut candy pot, someone appeared at Maria's door. It was Zé, with a smile on his face. He was bringing more firewood, as he always did when he saw that she needed it. "It's tough, huh?" he said, observing the amount of work she still had ahead of her. Maria smiled tiredly but gratefully. "That's all I have for today, Zé. I can't stop now." Zé put the firewood in the corner of the house, and as he prepared to leave, said, "You'll go far, Maria. I know you will." Maria looked at him, and a feeling of gratitude took over her. "Thank you, Zé. Even when I couldn't see a way out, you were always here, giving me a hand. Now I know it's going to work out." That recognition, that simple gesture from Zé, made Maria realize how much she was surrounded by good people. They were the basis of her strength, her support, even without knowing it. As night fell and the sweet smell invaded the little house, she looked at Lucas, who was already sleeping peacefully in his improvised bed. "I did all this for you, my son," she whispered. She knew that he would have a better future than the one she had. The life she was building would be for him, so that he would have opportunities and dreams come true, and that was all that mattered. Maria no longer needed to prove anything to anyone, not even João. He had left, taking everything he could, but she had something much greater now. She had the respect of those who believed in her, the love of her son, and the certainty that no matter what obstacles she faced, she would keep fighting. When she looked at the stove, at the simple little house she was transforming into a home, Maria felt proud. This was hers, and no one could take it away. The orders kept increasing, and with each new contract, Maria felt that her life was going in the right direction. She no longer felt like an abandoned woman with a broken stove, but an entrepreneur with a business that was taking off. She was creating her own story, and now she could give her son everything she never had, She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to work until the end to ensure a better future for Lucas. Time passed and Maria continued to struggle. The days were long and exhausting, but she felt a deep satisfaction in her heart, a feeling she had never felt before. The business was growing. Her sweets were now a success in the city, and she was gaining the respect of people who previously saw her only as an abandoned woman with an uncertain future. But she was no longer that Maria. She was now a woman with a purpose, with a mission, to raise her son with dignity and show everyone that, even in difficult times, it was possible to overcome. Maria already had her own stall at the fair, a small shop where she sold her sweets, and she even started hiring help. Dona Zifa helped her in the kitchen, and Zay, always present, helped with transportation and the supply of firewood. The city, previously distant and full of uncertainties, was now her ally. Maria was in tune with it. She knew the streets, the shops, and the customers who always asked for her sweets with enthusiasm. Maria's name, the woman of the country sweets, was being spoken in many places, and she could not be more proud. But not everything was perfect. There were nights when she would lie on the floor of the little house, tired, her body aching, and she felt the weight of her responsibilities. The pressure of keeping everything running seemed immense, and Maria sometimes wondered if she could handle it all. But then she would look at Lucas sleeping peacefully beside her, and she knew she couldn't give up. He was her motivation. He needed her, and she would do anything to ensure he had a better future, a future free from the hardships she herself had faced. One afternoon, while preparing a batch of brigadeiros to take to the market, Maria was interrupted by a well-dressed man who appeared at the door of her stall. He looked at her with a smile, seeming to know exactly who she was. "You are Maria, owner of the famous coconut candy and brigadeiro, aren't you?" he asked in a friendly tone. Maria smiled shyly, not sure who he was. "Yes, it's me. What can I do for you?" The man smiled even more and said, "I'm Carlos, the owner of a supermarket chain in the city. I've heard a lot about your sweets, and I'm interested in buying them to sell in my chain. What do you think?" Maria was silent for a moment, processing what she was hearing. "Do you want me to supply sweets to your supermarket chain?" she asked, still in disbelief. Carlos nodded confidently. "Yes, I do. We can close a supply contract. We can start with 100 coconut sweets and 100 brigadeiros every week. I'll pay $100 per batch." Maria felt her heart beat faster. She looked at Lucas, who was beside her, playing with a piece of wood. "I have no words to thank you. This is a great opportunity," she said, her eyes shining. "But I also know that this will require a lot of work. I will need help." Carlos smiled, as if he already knew that Maria was ready to accept. "I know, and I'm here to help you grow. If you want, we can talk more about how to structure the supply and even help with the logistics." Maria nodded, not knowing what to say. It all seemed surreal, but she knew that this opportunity could change her life forever. From that day on, Maria dedicated herself even more. She knew she was about to enter a new phase of her life, and that meant more work, more responsibilities, but also more possibilities. She met with Carlos to discuss the details, and soon her sweets were being sold in supermarkets. The quality of her products won over the city and beyond. People from all over began talking about Maria's sweets. She didn't know exactly where this path would take her, but one thing was certain. Maria was living the beginning of a new chapter in her life. With the new contract signed, Maria felt that her life was finally taking a solid direction. Each day brought new tasks, new challenges, but she faced them with the confidence she had lacked before. Her sweets were on the supermarket shelves, and with each delivery, she felt the satisfaction of seeing her work being recognized by people who had never even imagined who she was before. The dream that had seemed distant now became increasingly real. She was no longer that abandoned woman, but a businesswoman with a brand that carried her name and her story. However, with success also came pressure. Maria needed to ensure that her production maintained quality, that deadlines were met, and that customer service remained impeccable. She could no longer do everything alone, so she started hiring more people to help her. Dona Zifa, who had always been her faithful friend, continued in the kitchen, but now Maria had a small team. Sales were constant, and contracts were getting bigger. She was already thinking about expanding to other cities, perhaps opening a factory. Everything was happening so fast, but Maria knew she couldn't let herself get carried away by the vanity of success. Hard work and humility were the foundation of everything. However, things were not always easy. There were days when Maria woke up feeling like she couldn't handle everything. She felt the weight of her responsibilities, the physical and emotional exhaustion. Time seemed scarce, and she still had to take care of Lucas, who was growing up fast. She never wanted him to feel her absence, even when she was busy with work. At night, before going to sleep, she would hold him in her arms and say, "You are the reason I am here, my son. We will continue together and overcome everything that comes our way." These words made her feel that her struggle was worth it. Lucas was there, by her side, and that gave her strength. The village market where Maria had started it all was still an important place for her. Although she was now selling to large supermarkets, she did not want to lose her connection with the simple people of the village, with those who had supported her from the beginning. Every Saturday she still set up her stall, and her sales there were always a success. The people of the village were proud of her, and she felt that she still needed that connection to her roots. There, Maria was still the woman selling sweets with a smile on her face, the woman who did not let adversity get her down. One afternoon, while at the fair, she was surprised by an unexpected visitor. A well-dressed man approached their tent. When Maria saw him, she felt a shiver down her spine. It was João, with a thinner face, unshaven, and eyes full of regret. He approached with hesitant steps, and Maria felt mixed feelings. She didn't know what to expect, but she couldn't ignore it. "Maria," John began, his voice low, "I know I was wrong, and nothing I say will change what I did, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I lost everything, and now I see what you've achieved all by yourself. I'm truly sorry for everything." Maria looked at him without expressing anger or hatred. She only felt deep sadness. She thought for a moment before answering, and her words came out calm but firm. "John, you threw me away, left me with nothing, and I had to rebuild myself on my own. I have already overcome everything you did. I don't need your apology. What I want is for you to know that I am fine, that my son and I are fine, and that is the most important thing." John looked at her with guilty eyes but said nothing more. He knew there was nothing he could do to change what had happened. Mary turned around, her head held high, and went back to serving her customers. She no longer felt hurt, no longer angry. She had found peace within herself and knew that with or without John, she and Lucas would have a better future. Time continued to pass, and with it, Maria's life changed completely. Her business prospered, and each day brought new opportunities. Maria's name was now on many shelves, not only in the city, but also in neighboring towns. Her sweets were in supermarkets, grocery stores, and even in some bakeries. She became a reference not only in the village, but throughout the state. The woman who had once been abandoned alone with a broken stove now had a candy factory, a respected name, and most importantly, the love and admiration of her son. Maria never forgot her origins. She continued visiting the fair every Saturday, always with a smile on her face, always with the humility of someone who never forgot the path she took to get there. The village community still supported her, and she in turn continued to support the small traders, helping them whenever she could. The fair was her point of connection with the past, with the roots that kept her going when everything seemed lost. Her relationship with Lucas also grew stronger every day. She always made sure to be present in his life, teaching him the values she herself had learned throughout her struggle. Maria wanted Lucas to grow up knowing the value of hard work, perseverance, and humility. She knew he had a bright future ahead of him, and she would do whatever it took to give him the opportunities she never had. With the factory now fully operational, Maria began to think about new possibilities. She wanted to expand even further, perhaps opening branches in other cities or even selling her products to other supermarket chains. She dreamed big, but at the same time, she knew that success did not come without effort. With each new step, she remembered the difficulties she had faced and knew that, no matter how much she had achieved, the struggle would never be easy. But that did not intimidate her. She was prepared for whatever came her way. Meanwhile, the city and the village watched her with pride. Everyone saw Maria's transformation and knew that her story was a true lesson in overcoming adversity. She was living proof that no matter how difficult it was, there was always a way to get back on your feet. She had done it alone, with no one to help her, but with a heart full of courage and love for her son. One night, after another exhausting day of work, Maria sat at the door of her little house, looking at the stars. Beside her, Lucas slept peacefully in his bed. The sweet smell of freshly made brigadeiros filled the air, and she smiled to herself. We did it, my son. Everything I went through, all the suffering, it was all worth it. Now let's keep going. Let's grow even more. She knew that the future was just beginning, and despite all the difficulties that might still arise, she had something very valuable. Her inner strength, her determination, and above all, her unconditional love for Lucas. He was the reason why she would never give up, and with him by her side, Maria knew that nothing could stop her. The world was before her, and she was ready to conquer everything that was still left to conquer. And so, with courage and hard work, Maria built the empire that once seemed impossible. She was no longer the woman who had been abandoned with a broken stove. She was now the woman who, with the strength of her struggle, built a future not only for herself, but also for the son she loved more than anything. If you are enjoying our stories, subscribe to the channel, comment, and leave your like. Do not miss this story that is playing on the screen. I'm sure you'll like it. Until the next video.